wait for the last seconds to have people from the lobby come in. All right. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Warmly welcome to the final seminar of CompLeap project. My name is Julia Jousilahti, and I work as a senior advisor in independent think tank Demos Helsinki, and I will be your host today. As we probably all here know, during the past years, lifelong learning has become a really hot topic of discussion, because it has been estimated that automation, digitalization, globalization will remarkably shape work. It will change the jobs there will be for humans. It will change what tasks will be done within different jobs. So that is kind of clear. And the sort of self-evident answer to this transformation is that we need more lifelong learning. I guess no one really disagrees with that. But what is needed is new services and tools that actually make lifelong learning accessible and easy for all. And that is where CompLeap comes into play. So CompLeap is a Europe-wide project that has aimed to develop a learner-centered digital ecosystem for competence development. So quite bold ambitions. How to make an ecosystem of digital services in a learner-centered way. So to simply put, the question is, how could different digital tools and services make lifelong learning easier for all? And I think that is a really important question for which we need answers now to make lifelong learning actually a reality. CompLeap run for 2 years, and today we have the exciting opportunity to learn more about the findings and results of the 2-year project. And we have a super exciting program today. This is the first half of the program before break. So first we will have opening words by Ministry of Education and Culture, Li Andersson, then have a short introduction to the project, briefly what was done, what was achieved by Antti Laitinen, project manager. Then a very exciting keynote speech by Lauri Järvilehto, an inspiring talker on the topic of learning. And then we will dive deeper into the results of CompLeap. Then we'll have a break, and then I'll let you know later what happens after the break. Or let's give it to you already now, so that you know what to wait. We will talk about lifelong guidance. That is very sort of central in lifelong learning. Then have a look at how does the situation look abroad. How does lifelong learning look in other European countries? Are they struggling with similar challenges as we are in Finland? Because as said, CompLeap has been a European-wide project. So it's very interesting to have learnings from other countries as well. And then we have the privilege already at this point learn something about the impact of CompLeap. What was achieved and where are sort of the big possibilities when Kati Isoaho and Heli Koskenniemi tell their key findings from the impact study made on the project. Then we will close at about 4:30 and then enjoy snacks and beverages outside and get to know each other better. But please, as not everyone could fit in this hall, make sure you share your learnings to the world outside the walls of this building by using these hashtags, and also follow CompLeap at Twitter so you know what will happen next after today. And before going to Minister Andersson's welcoming words, just a few practicalities. So there will be a demonstration today outside this building from 3 to 5 regarding the situation in Syria. It has nothing to do with CompLeap, but with European Union, yes. So there will be, the demonstration has been announced to be between 3 and 5 outside the building, which means that during those times no one can get in, but you can get out. But as you get out, please make sure you don't let anyone in. There will be security people at the door, so practically probably nothing to worry about, but it's just good to know that some special happenings will be happening outside the building. But before we move on to the results of the project, I would like to invite Minister of Education Li Andersson to give her welcoming words via video to open the seminar.
Final seminar of the...
Oh, it's not showing the, of course. So, yes. A great start.
Man has been to moon, but somehow these videos never work.
Welcome to Helsinki and to the final seminar of the CompLeap project. It's a great pleasure for me to bring the greetings of the Finnish government to this seminar. As a part of the Finland EU Presidency Programme, today is also the first day of the European Vocational Skills Week, with a lot of activities and events taking place in Helsinki. Therefore, this is also a good opportunity to discuss the future of vocational education and training in Europe, and also to share ideas on similar topics as those that have been discussed during the CompLeap project. Personally, I want to emphasize the role and importance of continuous and lifelong learning for the whole of our society and for our educational system. In Finland, all over Europe and all over the world, we see how the changes in technological development also affects the labor markets and means that knowledge requirements are growing in all sectors of the labor markets and also in all different professions. At the same time, many sectors in the labor markets are also suffering from a severe shortage of skilled workers. Therefore, it's highly important that we invest in continuous learning and lifelong learning, and that we take full advantage of research and education, and using technology and digitalization, think about ways through which we can make our educational systems more flexible and more accessible to make sure that everybody has the possibilities for reskilling and upskilling throughout their lives. As we see it, investing in education and in continuous and lifelong learning is the best way to ensure well-being and also inclusive growth all over Europe, which is very much in line with the new strategic agenda adopted by the European Council and that we also aim to take forward. The government of Antti Rinne in Finland has set a goal that we will enact a big reform of our continuous and lifelong learning system, where we aim to look both at our educational structures, how accessible and flexible they are, but also at financial aid, counseling services, and at the labor market, to enact a reform that really makes it more possible than now for workers of different backgrounds and also for workers with a low educational background to reskill and upskill throughout their lives and throughout their careers. With these words, I wish you all a very fruitful seminar. I'm sure you will have a lot of interesting discussions and also a lot of new inspiration and ideas to take with you back home. Thank you.
Right. Thank you to Minister Andersson. And we will have a chance to hear a bit more about the Finnish government's current plans, how to make lifelong learning stronger in Finland later today. But next I would like to invite Antti Laitinen from CSC IT Centre for Science on stage. Antti has been responsible for managing CompLeap, and now he will share his key learnings of the project and also show us a short video that that gives a bit more concrete idea of how the world would look like if there was CompLeap already running and accessible for us all. So welcome, Antti.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. And also from the project team side, thank you very much for being here today. It's very nice to see so many people in this Europe Hall, although it's a holiday week in Finland. So this proves that the theme we are tackling here is very important. So how do we support the reskilling and upskilling of citizens by the use of digital technologies? So it's one of the key themes on the policy level to be discussed as well at the moment. So there has been quite wide network of stakeholders collaborating with CompLeap throughout this 2-year project. Thanks for all your work so far. Some of you have been closer to our work, joined very closely what has been done, and some maybe taken a big further look to what is happening. So we were thinking that it might be good to start with a brief introduction once again. So let's take a look at the brief video. This is our long-term vision. It's a goal, what we would like to achieve, and so far we are already taking steps towards this kind of world. So hopefully this gives you ideas for the coming day, and then later our project team will go into details and tell more about what is being achieved. So let's start with the video, and after that I'm going to briefly go once again through what was the general objectives and what is our great team we've been working with here. So please.
Let's see if it works this time. Straight from here. Apparently not, so there we go. Right here. Enjoy. Nope. Apparently not. Let's put the whole thing here. There we go. Full screen. Yeah.
The 18-year-old Anna has just completed her vocational and education training in food production. She could apply for a job, but wants to apply for a bachelor. She wonders what her options are. Anna talks to her guidance counselor and asks if he has ideas. He shows her the CompLeap site. Anna logs in and sees all of her pre-filled formal educations. This gives her an excellent view of her current competencies from her secondary school to her cooking classes. Back home, she adds her informal competencies, and CompLeap shows her a list of recommended educations. She likes what she sees and decides to apply for a bachelor in chemistry in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands. She's accepted and becomes a student. She studies hard, enjoys her life as a student in Holland, and makes a lot of new friends. After 4 years, she successfully finishes her study, and Anna is now ready for her first full-time job. We fast forward 10 years and see Anna as a successful chemist in Helsinki. She likes her job a lot and has great colleagues, but by now Anna is up for a new challenge and wants to try something new. She visits CompLeap again. Her profile has been updated with all of her courses, work experience, and trainings of the last decade. Based on her experience, she gets new educational recommendations. In the list is a recommendation for the study of chemistry teacher. This sounds good and also matches with her interests. She decides to apply. 2 years later, Anna has finished her study and now works as a teacher at the University of Helsinki. It turns out to be a perfect match, and she teaches with passion. Throughout her career, CompLeap helped her a lot in making the right choices. She points out the site often to her students and checks her own account frequently too. After all, learning never ends.
Just a moment. There we go.
So, like I said, this is the long-term vision. We are not there yet totally, but I hope that today's seminar shows that we have taken the steps towards this, and we have a kind of a plan how this kind of service could be created. At the moment, there is also kind of a legislation limitations, so So like you're going to see, we are only developing a prototype in this part, but hopefully in the future we're going to see a service in a real function like this. So these were the three outcomes when we started. So we were supposed to create this kind of learner-centered framework architecture of the digital ecosystem. And my colleague Ari Robori from CSC will present soon this part of the project. And this should be kind of a roadmap, how we could create this kind of service also in other EU countries. So this was the task number one. And underneath this, we were supposed to create new kind of service prototypes. So kind of testing new kind of things. And today's proof of concept you're going to see proves that this kind of service could be created. And it's based basically the feedback given by you, the stakeholders. So when we started, we didn't exactly know what kind of prototype we are supposed to create, but it was you stakeholders who gave the feedback that we really need these kind of services if we want to support citizens' lifelong learning. And thirdly, the analytics creating value as a part of the new service prototypes. So these three themes we are talking later today, and my colleagues will present more detailed. So this was our project team, CSC as responsible for the project management, then Finnish National Agency for Education leading the prototype development together with their subcontractors. Reactor was the most important one. Then University of Oulu seeking new ways to support the competence development by the use of analytics. This was closely linked to the prototype development. And then Gradia and the other vocational education providers piloting and testing, giving us important feedback from the learners and the end users, and also the experts who are helping, for example, in schools, individuals with their choices. So we wanted to highlight that this is a tool also for the guidance counselors and that kind of stuff. So 4 partners from Finland, and then we had our Dutch partners from Netherlands. So Duo helping us to build international networks. So we were also supposed to disseminate our results to other countries and get feedback from other countries. And later today you're going to hear a panel discussion where we compare the situation from different EU countries. So hopefully you have a lot of questions and comments for that then. Okay, so this was the brief introduction. Our team, my colleagues will tell more about what we have created, but before that we'll have today's first keynote. So building up this context. So why is this theme so important? So Julia, please.
Yeah. I'm not a keynote speaker. Thank you, Antti. Yeah, so next, like you said, to give a context to CompLeap and why it is so important, we'll have our first keynote speaker, who is Lauri Järvilehto. You probably all know him. So Lauri's mission is to create a world where everyone can find what brings them meaning in life. He's a philosopher, author, entrepreneur, and a musician, so clearly someone who has not stopped learning. And one of the main themes Lauri has explored during past years has been the theme of learning and how to make it fun. But next he will talk us about continuous learning and future work. Welcome Lauri Järvilehto, Doctor of Philosophy and Professor of Practice in Aalto-yliopisto.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Lauri Järvilehto, and for the next 30 minutes, what I'd love to do is to reflect a little bit on these themes of continuous learning and the future of work, and why this whole reform in continuous education and learning is so important in the present day and age. Actually, roughly about a week ago, actually exactly a week ago, so last Monday, I was in Columbia University at a seminar with a bunch of people, including 2 Nobel laureates in economics, reflecting on, how should we fix this broken thing called capitalism? What should we do to really, to make life meaningful for people all over the world. One of the speakers was the Nobel laureate from, I think, 2006 in economics, Edmund Phelps, who's a professor at Columbia University. And about 5 years ago, in 2014, we brought Professor Phelps to Finland to interact with some of our leaders, including our president, Sauli Niinistö, to figure out like what should we do in Finland to really sort of like make a difference in the lives of people, especially regarding to how they think and feel about their work. And actually, on the morning before we went to meet our president, we had lunch with the professor at the Camp restaurant. And I asked him, like, because like he's now 86. At that point, he was 81 years old, so pretty, experienced guy. Won a couple of prizes and in a pretty okay institution as a professor. So, like, I asked him, like, so what would you advise that we do? Like, if you just had to say one thing, what would that be to really, like, to have an impact on the working life of Finnish people? And he was there eating this, I think, a Caesar salad with chicken and, like, just munching it for a little while. And then he put down his fork and looked at me and he said, well, you know what? We just need to give them interesting things to do. And I think that pretty much summarizes the whole situation that I think that we are in right now. It seems to a great deal, when we look at the world, that there are so many changes going on that are really shaking up the institutions and structures we have, especially regarding education and working. Obviously, like, you've probably all heard about these analyses, like depending on who you ask, a bunch of Oxford researchers claimed in 2013, after interviewing several experts in the field of work, that roughly 47% of current professions will be obsolete in the next 15 years, which is a pretty whopping number. If you think about that, basically that means that if we split the crowd roughly in the middle, where the aisle goes, you guys, you're all set, don't worry about a thing. But you guys, you're not just going to be unemployed in the year 2030, you are going to be incapable of finding employment, because whatever you know now how to do to provide value in the job market is not going to be needed anymore. And this is usually when I piss off half my audience when I use this experience, so sorry about that, this example. But so, I mean, 47%, there's a bunch of other, I think it was a McKinsey report that came even closer to 50%. But then, like, in 2016, OECD came up with different numbers, claiming that it's only about 9% of the entire professions available that are going to be automated and obsolete. And if we take a look at it from this point of view, it seems that we have a pretty pressing problem, like, up ahead of us, like 10, 15 years from now. The way things are developing, the way technologies are challenging the way we work, or also making, like, the ways we work, more fun, more, like accessible, easier. At the same time, they are changing the landscape of what's out there, what's available, what kind of jobs we have. So in that sense, like, it looks that we have this, like, huge structural problem. What it actually roots down to is that, I mean, we are human beings. We have about 100 billion nerve cells in our heads. We have about 100,000 billion synapses that connect those nerve cells, which means that we are highly dynamic creatures. We can change the way we do things. We can change what we know how to do. We can change how we contribute to the society, how we contribute to the job market, but only if we can learn to really enjoy learning. And that roots it back to the fact that actually, even though on the surface the problem is structural, I think at the end of the day it all boils down to the fundamental, and this is like, where I have to apologize to the organizers for asking somebody with the philosophy background to come talk here. So this actually boils down to the fundamental existential conundrum of the human condition. Why are we here in the first place? Why are you as an individual human being here? What are you supposed to be doing? We get roughly, 80 or so years, probably like, my kids are going to get 120. What are we going to do with all that time? And that boils back down to the significance of our activities, which boils back down to the meaning of the work itself. So yes, technology is going to challenge a lot about how we do, but I would venture to say that these problems have been like, people have been writing books about this like 2,500 years ago. So it's not like, a new problem at the end of the day. What is different though right now is that even though technology has now made this problem explicit also on a structural level, what's happening is that technology is also offering us at least some avenues of inquiry that might be useful in figuring out how to, basically dig ourselves up from the hole that we dug ourselves. So the key issue here is that how can we build a society where everybody would actually want to learn? Where I would venture to say, like, I was in a group with a bunch of experts with Sitra in 2015, where we came up with this vision, like, that why couldn't Finland be the type of a country where everybody loves to learn? And then, like, we wrote this sort of, like, report about it or pamphlet, what have you. And then I was really sort of happy because then after that our new government had this sort of like kind of watered down phrasing of this, like, let's make Finland into a country where everybody wants to learn new things, which is kind of like saying the same thing in politices. But then, like, 2 weeks after that, they slapped down 600 million of educational cuts, and that was like pretty like jaw-dropping, like what's going on with these guys. So we have in Finland a kind of a paradoxical situation, because on one hand, we are actually leading the way in continuous learning. I was, after the New York meeting, I went to Boston on Tuesday. I met with this guy called Hunt Lambert, who's the dean of Harvard Extension School, who are basically, actually, let me ask you guys, what decade do you think, because Harvard Extension School has been the pioneer in learning at a distance, like remote learning. So what decade would you venture to say they ran their first pilot projects of remote learning? Anybody? Nobody like dares to venture anything. Well, typically when I ask people this, they say like, I don't know, 1990s, like, some courageous ones say 1980s. I mean, they had computers back then. But the correct answer is they ran their first remote learning experience in 1940s. And, the technological innovation that they used at that point was called a radio. So I was talking with Mr. Lambert about this, like, situation, and it's very interesting because on the one hand, obviously, like, these Ivy League schools have been, like, running these pilots for ages. They've been, like, Harvard has been one of the spearheads in MOOCs. And at the same time, I think there's something interesting going on in Finland, because especially given this, like, sort of ecosystem of learning and work, and especially those things that Minister Andersson mentioned there, that our government is now really, like, doubling down on, like, making this stuff a reality. And the thing that separates us, I mean, we obviously, we don't have Ivy League universities in Finland. But what separates us from those parties is that we actually have a relatively small population, and especially in the sort of like, startup ecosystem that has built in the last 10 years, what's happened is that, Finnish startup ecosystem is highly competitive with any startup ecosystem in the world, including Silicon Valley. We are growing in more VC investments per capita than any other country in Europe right now, which is crazy because 10 years ago when the Alta students started hustling this crazy phenomenon together, we had no capital almost whatsoever. But what's the big difference about the Finnish way of doing things is that whereas, the Ivy League or the Asian educational systems or Silicon Valley, which are all highly exclusive and hyper-competitive, so they single out the best of the best and that's why they succeed. The Finnish system is hyper-collaborative, which means that instead of like us competing like crazy, we are like, like if you think about the hockey team from last spring, the Finnish educational reform system is operating under quite similar principles. We don't have the best Ivy League superstar Nobel laureates here solving these problems. We have these like, normal Finnish people, like everybody in this room, like trying to figure out like how to do this, but we collaborate, we share information on a level that when I disclosed this to some Stanford professors at the beginning of September, they said that, that sounds like that would probably be illegal in the United States. And this is the type of like ecosystem, and this is the type of like, society that can actually, have a fighting chance at solving these problems. And now boiling back to the question of like, if we want to be able to meet the challenge of a world where, it might well be that 50% of the jobs will be obsolete in the next 15 years. It means that most of us, if not everybody, will need to learn to update how we learn, how we do things. We'll need to be basically updating our competencies all through our lives. Now, Mr. Lambert also pointed out that he wasn't too keen on this notion of lifelong learning, because it seems to put the responsibility of the learning to the learner, which is all good and fine. I mean, obviously, the society can benefit a great deal from this self-directedness and self-organization. Obviously, if you've read the newspapers lately, it's not going amazingly well, at least according to the newspapers in our school reform. One of the reasons is that people tend to equivocate people being by default self-organized to the fact that it's a skill that you need to learn just as any skill. But Mr. Lambert pointed out that actually what we should talk about is this idea that Harvard has been developing called the 60-year curriculum. So in fact, that we think about our life, not having a 12-year curriculum, but a 60-year curriculum. And like I said, our children are probably going to be, living up to 100, 120 years. So it's probably going to be a 100-year curriculum once they're, out there, up in the world. Which means that we need structured ways of updating our competence. We need platforms and methods where people can sign up, where, most people still have absolutely no idea what they want to do. How many of you guys know what you want to do when you grow up? Raise your hand. There's one hand too. I'm 42 and I have absolutely no idea. I spent my first 10 years of professional life working as a musician. I produced albums and made music for television, and spent 1 year at Svenska Teater as a conductor at this big Lord of the Rings musical, 24 years old with really long hair and had a lot of fun, but I don't know. I mean, then I went into this total millennial or pre-millennial, because I'm Generation X, existential crisis of what is the meaning of significance of what I do, and I couldn't answer that question, so I went back to school and figured I might as well start studying something useful, like philosophy. And then, I ended up at some point running a game studio, and now I'm working at Aalto University, co-directing Aalto Ventures program. So basically, we're running the entrepreneurship education program at our university, working very closely with the startup scene, working very closely with the lifelong learning projects ongoing in Finland and also elsewhere in the world, which is a really exciting place to be for now. But I don't know. I'm not really envisioning myself being here 5 or 10 years from now. I really actually have no idea what I'm going to be doing when I'm, for example, 50. But one thing that I do know, and one thing that I've felt, that has really helped me to update my competencies, if you want to use that clunky way of saying that, or just learn new stuff, as you can see it in plain English, has been that I've always had the blessing and the curse of really being almost unable to tolerate boredom, which has led to the fact that I've always had to gravitate towards the types of things that I've found exciting, or in more scientific terms, intrinsically motivating. And that led, I wrote a book called Upea Työtä in 2013, where I tried to reverse engineer how I ended up. At that point, I started 3 companies already. I'd worked in the music industry. I got a PhD in philosophy, and tried to figure out what was it that made all that happen. And at the end of the day, it's pretty simple. The first thing is we shouldn't ask people, what do you want to do when you grow up? It's the most idiotic question you can ask anybody, and nobody almost knows the answer. You really have to be really inhumanly centered and lucid and goal-oriented to be able to answer a question like that. However, what I think everybody, even my kids who are I have 5 kids, the youngest one is 3 and the oldest is 13, and at least the school-age ones, each can answer this question. What do you want to do when you wake up? What do you want to do in your everyday life? What things stoke you? What things interest you? And at that, we are all highly different. At that, we all have different kinds of how many of you people love to read books? Raise your hand. How many of you people love gardening? Raise your hand. How many of you love riding horses? Raise your hand. We're getting hands all the time. How many of you love hang gliding? Nobody? And that's the interesting thing. I mean, when you ask these types of questions, you always get a distribution. You always get answers. It's easy to answer because we know what we like, but we don't know exactly or everything that we could like. And that's why I'm often telling you, especially like, high school students and elementary school students, that, you really shouldn't aspire to do anything you don't like to do in your life, unless you don't like to do something in particular, in which case you have to do everything, including hang gliding. And only by experimenting and trying new things out and hanging around with new types of people, maybe in a new country like Holland, who knows, you'll be able to figure out what are those things that you like to do. And that's why I think that at the heart of competencies, at the heart of us being able to be continuous learners, needs to be first and foremost the question of what really motivates you, what really drives you, what do you care about most in your everyday life. And that's really, that boils down to a couple of very simple questions. First one, what do you want to do in your everyday life? Second one, what do you value? Do you value money, fame, and fortune? Do you value the environment? Like, I had this conversation 2 days ago with my mom that when I was 5, I had this, crazy dream that I wanted to bring African kids Big Macs and Coke because I thought that that's the best food I can imagine. And then I wanted to save the panda bears. And then, eventually, when I sort of start looking back at my life, I've been still gravitating somehow towards those goals. And now working with, startup ecosystem and with this whole sustainable development goal framework by the UN, I actually realized that with Lightyear, with my game company, I was actually able to run some pilot projects, with African kids, or these guys are from Cambodia. So we actually went to Uganda and Cambodia and a bunch of developing countries to try out these learning games. And now with the SDGs, I just realized, hey, pandas are back in the game. And that was actually pretty exciting. So I mean, what do you want to do? What do you value? What excites you? And those are the types of questions that are infinitely easier to answer than what you want to be when you grow up. And I think that's the heart of continuous learning. Because let's face it, like Julia said there, I've been working for the last 10 years, trying to figure out how to make learning fun, how to make learning accessible. I've been slammed a lot with this idea, fun learning, because, at the end of the day, learning, it's not fun, right? Is it? And, often when we try to do learning, it's not fun. Because at the end of the day, learning always, and without exception, if you want the whole truth and nothing but the truth about it, is that learning is hard work. What is, however, the case also is that when you're learning about things that you care about, it is fun. It's not fun in the sort of song and dance, la 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 la, where it's fun in the sense that when you really care about something, you feel your heart sing with joy when you're figuring out things in that field that you care about. And that's why, we should really, restructure fun in that sense and understand that it's more about linking what you learn to what you care about. And once you get that bridge going on, there's no stopping the learning. And that's why I'm so excited about these changes in the Finnish society right now, about these opportunities out there, especially about these digital ecosystem solutions, of which CompLeap is one great example. Because we have basically all the tools to make this type of learning ecosystem reality. They already exist. We have, great services already, like, Opintopolku or Työmarkkinatori. We have, the Koski database. I've been, talking about this with tons of people abroad, and people are just, really jaw-dropped about the fact that we are this far, in our little 5.5 million country. And now the only question is, I think, twofold. First, we need to figure out how to integrate these systems that already exist, and the other one is how to get the question of motivation rooted to the core of that. How to approach our next generation of learners, whether they be 5, 15, or 55 years old, with the question of what you want to do. This is the vision that I've been sort of building now the last year and a half or so. We should actually, I agree with Dean Lambert that we should not talk about lifelong learning, but life-wide learning. Learning isn't just something that needs to happen from the cradle to the grave, but it's something that needs to happen in every day on some levels. A great example of how this is actually happening in practice is the Elements of AI online course developed by Reactor and University of Helsinki. That's, in my opinion, I've been benchmarking this space for the last 10 years. That's the first time I've actually experienced true life-wide learning. So the type of learning that you can do 5 minutes at a time, like when waiting for the metro or the tram, and then all of a sudden you realize, like when I got that email that, hey, did you know that you've completed a course worth 2 credit units? I was like, whoa, wait, what? And this is the type of learning that we need, learning that's integrated in our everyday life. A society, like Minister Andersson said in her speech, which actually supports with financial mechanisms this constant slide, so that working and learning aren't separate entities, but they are a part of normal human life, a part of the way we contribute to the society. Because the society also, we are done with the factory model. We are done with the busy bee model. We are done with the Aesopian ant and the grasshopper analog. We aren't anymore dividing people into ants or grasshoppers. We need something more. And that something more is a kind of a human being who wakes up in the morning thinking, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to go do those things that I care about, with this sort of fire in their eyes, because they really want to do those things that they want to do, whether they're doing work or they're doing learning today or Tuesday or Wednesday. And at the end of the day, like I said, we have all the ways to solve this in our hands. We don't have to invent anything new anymore. We just need to do precisely what is being done in this project as well. Bring all the stakeholders together, collaborate, be that beautiful Finnish hyper-collaborative society. Like throw out the ideas and integrate these. And at the end of the day, remember that at the heart of it, there is the human being with the existential question of why we are here. And in creating a society truly learning life-wide from every day until we wake up, until we go to bed, will have solved this problem. Not just for us, but I think also for the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauri. That was so inspiring and relieving, because I've been struggling also with the question that should I know what I will become when I grow up? Yeah. But I don't. So thank you for that. Any questions to Lauri? If not, I can start, which is that what would be the one thing you would change in the much praised Finnish education system to make it support better people with this continuous learning mindset and skills?
Should I talk to the mic, or can you hear me?
I think there's...
Oh. So,
yeah.
So the one thing that I would change in the educational system. So first of all, I think our educational system is going into a great direction, and I don't know if it really needs that much, interventions for the time being. The way I would love for it to develop is even more courageously towards this sort of Montessori style of pedagogy, where we really task ourselves, already with the 7 and 8-year-olds, to try to figure out what are the things that they really want to latch on to, and then let even the kids focus on those things that they really want to learn right now. So I think, if we think about the 6-year curriculum, I think the time of the type of curriculum where everybody needs to learn everything, some bunch of predetermined things at the same pace at the same time, the time for that model is becoming obsolete. And just figuring out how to help our kids discover, already at an early age, what they want to do at that point. And then moving on, it's not that I think the horrible sort of misunderstanding of this notion is that, okay, so kids need to decide whether they become doctors or lawyers at 7 years old already. And that's not at all what I'm saying. And I think, if you take, Maria Montessori pretty much solved this whole thing already 100 years ago. So it's at the end of the day, just observing what the kids gravitate. My own kids, Silja's acrobatics, she's now in a dancing, focused school, because she's acrobatically, she literally, climbed to the top of, a telephone pole when she was 5 years old. And that's her thing, and she's being, able to develop on that. And then Lucas, he just, bloody hell, he beat me in chess on Saturday. So he's more like mathematically and like engineering oriented and stuff like that. And just giving the kids the sort of like, the freedom to freely like go into those directions that feel most compelling while giving them support there, and then making sure that they get this rudimentary basic skill set of like reading, writing, and basic arithmetics while they go at that. And I think we would be pretty much all set with our kids as well.
Definitely. Any questions to Lauri? If not, we will say thank you and move on, or dig a bit more deeper into CompLeap's results. Thanks a lot. One warm round of applause to Lauri. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, one of the main results of CompLeap has been the development of the so-called learner-centered framework architecture design. It's quite many difficult words, one after another, but basically it means modeling the information and services needed in order to make lifelong learning actually learner-centered. So next we will have Senior Enterprise Architect Ari Rouvari from CSC, perhaps with Antti Laitinen also with him, to tell us a bit more about the framework architecture design in the project. So welcome, Ari. Yeah.
Should we start with the video?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
We're living in a world of digitalization, automation, and other technology megatrends. As a result, the labor market is evolving and lifelong learning becomes ever more important. So we all need either upskilling or reskilling in order to keep up with these changes and meet the new requirements in our working life. By now, we are so used to living online these days that we expect to find all information and services online. But unfortunately, this is not always as easy as it sounds. As a result, we have to use different apps, log in multiple times, and make sure we send the right documents to the right organizations, and finally, keep track of everything. This makes searching for jobs in education unorganized, and users often don't feel in control. This has to change. In CompLeap, we are creating a learner-centered framework architecture. This allows different organizations to collaborate across administrative and sectoral boundaries and build shared ecosystems in which all service providers can come together, no matter whether they are public, private, or NGOs. Framework architecture is a planning and visualization tool. As such, it is not visible to learners, but the benefits are obvious. Finding services becomes easier because they are well connected and have similar or integrated interfaces. So instead of spending time on the hassle between different services, people can focus more on actual learning, and that is what lifelong learning should be about. CompLeap, offering new digital solutions for lifelong learners.
Go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We have that kind of structure for this short slot, also presentation of what is enterprise architecture in this project. That first I have a couple of minutes presentation, and then we continue with discussion and interviews with Julia. Sorry. So first I will tell you what we actually done and why we did what we did. And this is what we made framework architecture for EU. And this framework architecture, it's like a reference architecture actually. We have actually two synonyms for that, framework architecture and framework reference architecture. And this architecture, this is a structure of the architecture or meta model, whatever word you want to use. And it consists of three different parts or layers. And the top part there is a strategic level. And on that level we have strategic goals. Our goals and our outcomes, and those outcomes and goals, maybe I should, okay. And those goals and outcomes come directly from our EU documents. And those capabilities are ability we have to gain or reach those goals and outcomes. The next level, the yellow one, is the business strategy. And in this level, we describe our actors or stakeholders and their roles. In that way, we know with whom we are doing this and who are providing these services. The learner part is the green one, and this is our common sense of which kind of is our learner's part. And in this case, we try to find a common sense, common understanding in different sectors, how it could be, and I think that we succeed in that way. And then we have services. Services we have to provide services what our customers are using when they are walking on the path. And the blue section behind, that's the application architecture or information system architecture. And in that part, we are just describing which kind of systems we need to provide these business services. And what next? After that, when we describe that architecture, we have decided that this architecture cannot live, that CompLeap architecture, it cannot live anymore as alone. So we decided that we have to talk about that in Finland. We could integrate that architecture in some way with where our higher education institution architecture, OPI architecture, and also with our vocational training education architecture called AMOS architecture. So that way it's going to continue its living. And in European level, I hope that we could some way integrate those what we have learned and what we have modeled with that European project called Eurooppasali. Because this is we have a lot of same kind of goals. So this is one way to get more life for this architecture. Okay, in this project we focused on those 4 services market with the green outline: career and study guidance, competence mapping, comparing opportunities, and education offer. Okay, and why we did this? Most of all, like enterprise architecture usually, the key point is the aim of to use enterprise architecture is to put the strategy into practice. And in this case also it was the same. We deployed our strategy. And in this enterprise architecture project or our tasks, we visualized our aims and ideas, and that way we try to reach the same kind of understanding what we are doing. And at the same time we documented with those models our ideas, so we can go back. So that last time we talked about that, and now it's now this way, and we can of course update it at that time. But that way we can cooperate and communicate with each other. And we evaluated these architecture models in couple of places in Europe, and it was easier to start to show our ideas and our goals with those models, and I think that it's some way you cannot do that without that kind of architecture modelings. So that was my part of the presentation, and now we can continue with questions and discussions.
Thank you, Ari. Yeah, so I read this as a map sort of on what aspects to take into account when you are developing these systems of or this ecosystem of different services in lifelong learning. So it sounds very interesting. So what were your main learnings in the process when you were developing this?
Okay, we learned a lot, and this is I picked up maybe 3 most important issues. First of all, when we look at our documentation for this project, we noticed that they mentioned that in this project we are going to or try to go beyond silos, cooperate with different administrative branches, with different ministries, and of course between different sectors, private and public. And what we know, of course, we noticed that this is we learned that this is not easy. This is a very hard task actually to do. This is a very high level task, not easy to gain. But we have also found some tools or ideas to try to cooperate. And one is, my point of view is that if we have a same goal, and if we are doing this as a learner-centered way, if we think about the services for the learner, I think that way we can some way go beyond silos, because our customer, he or she is not keen on who is providing the services. He or she want to use those services. If we have a very user-centric way to provide or planning our services, we can tackle this challenge. But of course, it's not easy. Another point is, of course, motivation and ability. I think that we are some way, many times, overestimate our ability to cooperate, because we have big tradition and big history to work in those sectors and silos. It's not easy really to go beyond the silos, to start to work really together, to put that kind of tasks. But I think that we can of course we can handle that. If you have read our new government program, they say in that program that we have to cooperate between different ministries, and this is a very good driver for this kind of work. The second point, how to handle this kind of complexity in EU level. Even in Finland, it's very hard task to understand and manage different kind of education systems and labor markets. And the easy word for this is you cannot handle that in EU level alone. You have to cooperate again. I again underline this word. And the third, like I told, we have set this, the goals of the project in a very high level. But I think that I recommend us to be brave. You have to have a lot of guts to start to do this kind of reaching this kind of goals. But it's also some way it's hard, but it's also some way very very funny. And I try to say that in Finland we have saying yrittänyttä ei laiteta. I try to find what is in English word or I think it's something like this: nothing ventured, nothing gained. So be brave. You have to be courage to do this.
Then we discuss the next point. Maybe you could, because there's perhaps people in the room who would be interested in this, but can you explain shortly what can this enterprise architecture be used for? Like in what kind of cases?
Okay, usually it's like the name is enterprise architecture. It's the architecture of your company, of your organization. But this is in this case, it's enterprise is more than just a company. It's a kind of ecosystem. So in this case, like usually, we are trying to describe our strategic level and our business architecture. And we had actually some good points what we learned to use this a tool. One point of using this kind of method is it's a very okay, I can't remember the word, but anyway, I think that it's a very excellent tool for communication, a collaboration, and a planning of a future. Make our new visions, try to make them more visualizing our futures and documenting our ideas. And I know I have learned in this process that with this is a tool, but I think that we some way succeed to some way diminish the borders between different administrative branches. But of course, this is I have another slide, this is also very, very hard tool to use. Many times when we talk with people in different places in Europe and in Finland with Antti, people say that they ask, I'm sorry, but we are not so technical guys that we could talk about that kind of issues, because those models, they look like very technical, but actually they are not. The point is because we are using that kind of language, Archimate language. We are using a lot of different elements, arrows and connectors. And that's a little bit sad. I think that we cannot visualize it at the moment quite well in a management level. Of course, in architecture level we can do that, but management level, I think that we should improve our ability to describe as a management level our architecture. That actually, I'm trying to say that we need a new layer over the architecture pictures. And what I hope and that because normally we do in architecture. By the way, I have plenty of time.
1 minute to finish this answer.
Okay, I skipped this. Let's move on.
Okay.
I would like to show one picture.
30 seconds.
This is not architecture. This is something what I tried to say a couple of seconds ago. This is not an architecture picture. This is a more kind of management language. What we found in this project. I would like to use the term innovation, but you don't know. But anyway, the key point in this wheel is this competence profile in the middle, and this competence profile includes or consists of work history, formal work history, if you have that, your education history, if you have that, informal competencies, and other skills. Lower side of the picture there is more like soft skills, like interest. In that way, you got the motivation for do that. Realities, do you really have an opportunity to join education? Do you have funding, public transport, accommodation, that kind of things? Culture, it's very important. What is your background? Where are you living? You cannot underestimate that. And then other soft skills, ability to learn and work. I also heard today a new word for lifelong guidance, new word for me. If you are doing guidance for yourself, it's more like careering. I think that careering part of that ability to learn and work. So, and then you see the lifelong learning, the arrow here on the left-hand side. This is a kind of driver or mega trend which put this wheel rolling. And then on the other side, on the one hand, lifelong guidance. You need this competence profile for your guidance. You cannot do that guidance to your customer without the profile. And other way, this lifelong guidance put more effort. It actually accelerates this wheel rolling faster and faster and faster. I think that it sounds like it's a never-ending story. Of course, it may end when I die, but I don't know. Nobody knows. Maybe.
Now we're getting to next level.
Okay,
Thank you, Ari. Stay there for a while. You have a minute to think about if you have something you would like to ask Ari, or perhaps Antti can also be present here. Yes.
Yeah. I would like to ask about I would like to ask you about your first one where you share with you. Yes, this one. If you're talking about related reference architectures, so what do you mean with that?
Okay, reference architecture is it's something like that. If, for example, in education sector, we should have a reference architecture for all our education sectors, and even larger. Maybe it should include also different ministries like Ministry of Education, Ministry of Labor, and Ministry of Healthcare. So this is a kind of steering architecture, and after that you make your own enterprise architecture in your own company. It's some way steering. This is what we are doing in this area or sector or in this country.
Is there a special one you picked up?
Excuse me?
Is there a special one? Special architecture you picked up?
Reference architecture is higher level architecture, and enterprise architecture is more like its name is architecture for your own organization, for example.
Yep, sure.
Yes,
Antti.
perhaps I can summarize this discussion so we can continue later in the panel discussion. But to put it very briefly, now you didn't have the time to take a look at the architecture models, but enterprise architecture, learner-centered enterprise architecture can be a tool for a collaboration. And like Lauri said, we already have a lot of interesting things going on in this field. But if we don't have this kind of collaboration tool like enterprise architecture, these interesting projects, they are not coming together. And if we really want to build an ecosystem for the learners, we need something like this. So if you're interested, after this seminar, better contact us and we can tell you more. So because of lack of time, we now don't have time to go to the modeling, but there's a lot of kind of a roadmap stuff built in this project. And learner is in the middle in all this. And this is interesting in a national level and also in an EU level. For example, when we presented this to the Eurooppasali network, so there was a lot of interest whether this kind of enterprise architecture could also support the collaboration between EU countries. So to put it very briefly. But now, because of lack of time, I think we need to move on.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ari and Antti. Applause to them as well. All right. Now it's time to move on to our prototypes, showcasing the prototypes that have been done in CompLeap. So next I would like to invite Annika Mohr and Markus Kaselius from the National Agency for Education to tell a bit more about these prototypes. So welcome Annika and Markus.
Hi, hello everyone. Greetings. Good to be here, good to see you all here. So far we've seen our vision in the video as well as the blueprint for getting there, which is basically the reference architecture, the architecture work that Ari was just discussing. And now we'll look at an example or two examples of how we could concretely go forward, or at least what we've tested out so far of different ways that this could become sort of reality, what has been discussed so far. We've done the prototype development work basically in 3 stages. The first stage was collecting all of the ideas from our reference groups, from our stakeholders, in collecting the requirements for what this kind of service would need to have. This was closely related also to the architecture work. Then after that we've together with partners created prototypes, and which we will be going through together. And then now we're involved in user testing, so the piloting of these prototypes as well. Between these phases, we've had webinars, we've had demo sessions, and now we're deeply involved in piloting with our associate partners and with our stakeholders. And I'd actually like to, just for my benefit, to know how many of you in the audience have participated in one of our demo sessions or one of our webinars so far, just to know how many. There you go, a lot of hands. That makes me happy, thank you. Also, now I'd like to know how many of our piloting partners are present here who are involved in our piloting. There are some hands. There you go. You have been a great help actually in all of the phases so far. So thank you very much from our part, and it's great to have you here, and it's great that you're still doing the piloting for us. Let's go forward. Out of what Ari was just discussing and what Julia and Ari were together discussing, it's important to sort of maintain the fact that is the vision, that is what is needed at a higher level. And then out of that vision, out of that framework architecture, we've created these examples. And that's what I'm presenting at the moment. We've created prototypes that show and test the concept, and that depict or link together these processes that have been discussed. And what we wanted to achieve is basically to show how for the benefit of the learner we can bring together different types of data, different kinds of services that already exist. And what we really wanted to achieve is to show also how the really valuable assets that we have at the national level, which are the data sources like Koski and Opintopolku, can work together and provide more value for users when they are interoperable. Also, at the sort of higher level, we created first of all, we created this HTML prototype, which depicts, to some extent, the vision we have of a learner-centered profile, which would then be this competence accelerator that Ari was discussing in his last slide. And the idea here is to sort of go beyond silos and bring together data for the use of the learner, for the use of the user, basically. I'm not going to present this because I saw a lot of hands and a lot of you have been involved in the demo sessions that we've had so far, but here is the link and you can go and click around and see what we have achieved there. This work was done during November, December in 2018, and after that we moved on to our next prototype, which also integrates actual real data, not personal data from the users, but actual real data that exists in educational databases. Why we did this is because we wanted to create content with analytics, and this is something that the University of Oulu has been driving in this project and has been researching for us. So with the help of the University of Oulu, we've researched possibilities for personalization of the user experience. And the aim has been to basically to evoke user reflection and reflection of the users or the learners' competences, as well as their interests and their future options. Now, before I give the floor to Markus and we present the final product or the final prototype, we want to show you a short video presenting a partial, well, basically the prototype.
This one. Whenever you're ready.
How do we go back?
The right one. Yeah, good.
Go ahead.
Onko mä tässä niinku eteenpäin? Miten mä pääsen tälle
Se on siellä auki sieltä taustalla.
Okay. Yeah, good afternoon from my side also. It's good to see you all in here. My name is Markus Kasles. I'm coming from, once again, the Finnish National Agency for Education. Learning never ends. We have changed the name 2 years ago, but I'm still having some difficulties remembering that. It's a new English name. So yeah, I have been like a part of the team who have been building this, developing this proof of concept, our prototype for the CompLeap. And we started this work early this year. It was February, and we ended in August. So it was like 6 months that we developed this. We have a team of 3 at the most, 3 developers, and a team of like 3 or 4 from the Edufy side also. So I will show what we have done now. If I can miss this down. No. Excellent. Thank you, Topias. No niin. So have you? Well, first question. Have you seen this before? Have you been in here? Have you visited this website? Okay, some of you have. Well, I will have like a couple of minutes now. I will walk you through this. I will show what we have in here, and then after that, you will also use our prototype, and we will get some feedback from you also, hopefully. But I will talk about that a little bit later. Annika will show about the Mentimeter that we are going to use after this showcasing of this prototype. So you have now some kind of like idea what we have done in here, and now you saw that quite great video where the guy was like dancing there, was so happy. Maybe I'm also dancing tonight, but let's see if that is the case. But so hi Markus, next choose your background. So like Annika said, this is just like a prototype. This is a proof of concept. We are not using real data, not real personal data, but we are using real study information data from Opintopolku, and then we are also using real data from our e-requirements service, e-perusteet service, and also we are kind of like linked into the Koski National Degrees database. So, but what we have in here, we have four profiles that you can play with, and I will just choose the first one, which is like there are 2 of them are like when you have graduated from the vocational degree, and 2 of them that you have dropped out. I will choose the one that I have graduated from the environmental management degree, so you speak, in vocational degree. So some kind of ympäristönhoitaja, luonto- ja ympäristöalan perustutkinto. So like you saw in the video, the guy was like clicking. So what we are showing now, our prototypes, it consists of 3 like basic databases. So we have the e-requirements, we have in here the study units, and then we have the fields of interests that you can click also on, that you are like 3 to 10 topics that you would like to work with, you are interested in. And then we will have the outcome, the education opportunities. So the third database is like what we are using is the Opintopolku study info services study options. So, but first, I'm seeing that I have graduated from 2016, and here are my study units. And what I really liked was like this. Living and working in a sustainable way. I really like that because that's really important for the future also. Ympäristön hoitaminen, okay, taking care of the environment. Of course, that was like close to my heart, and of course that using renewables energy sources. But for example, I wasn't so keen into like maintaining the trekking trails or building cultural environments, for example. So I would just like click some of them down and up, and then I will move forward. Then there's fields of interest. So what I'm like interested in the future. So I'm still interested in nature. So I will choose this environment, farming, and then forest, for example. And besides that, I'm really loving traveling. So tourism and food, of course, everyone likes to eat. So food sector and some accommodation sector also. So I'm through there. So now I have I have selected 8. Minimum is 3, but the maximum is 10. I have clicked 8 interest, and then I can click the show the suggestions or recommendations. So there you can see the results. Okay, these are in Finnish, but you can see the results for our there's a background of this prototype. There's a background. There's running this algorithm. So it's all mathematical. What I can briefly say. So we are just like playing with the numbers. And then we will have some future recommendations for you. And now what I have like clicked in this prototype in my profile, these are not in particular order right now, but number one in a way is matkailuvirkailija, so it's like a travel agent, and it's only like a vocational degree. But I have already finished from vocational degree, so I want to do something else. So I will set the limit to I will have like a filter for the higher education. It's because I have some ambition. I want to do master's degree or bachelor's degree. So then I will have some other like recommendations. They were also in the listed below that you saw, but now I just like filtered some of them away. But now you can see there's like an engineer from the field of traffic, and then, for example, also bachelor degree from environment planner, and these are all from the polytechnic sector. And if I want to read more, I can just like open this, and then I can even go and read more, and this link will go to the opintopolku, this study info service, where you can see even more about the degree or this study, what the studies are all about. But this is kind of like in a nutshell. What we have done in this prototype, and I think we are quite proud. What?
The competencies.
The competencies. You want to see also those? Yeah. This is the latest like addition to this to our prototype. This was the last one. So we have also made these competencies related to the education. Like you saw, these kind of like competence accelerators that Ari was also talking about and all of that. So what we have done, we have mapped these studies related to the education to the ESCO classifications. So if you know what is ESCO, it's like almost like 12,000 classifications of your like skills and competencies, and it's in every European language. So we have also mapped these out, so you can. These are not doing anything for the algorithm, but it is one way of like saying what you can do or what you are not like. If you are like I mean like if you have completed your studies from this ympäristönhoitaja, so we have the competencies ready for you also in here. So you can use these as a base for your CV, or if you're like applying for a new job or some training or something like that. So this is one way of like wording for you, for the user, that what you can do, what are your skills already, what is your skill set.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think, yeah, you can go forward.
Next, what we want to do is have you give us some very quick feedback. And I think, because I just saw that we only have 5 minutes left, that we'll only have one of these. But what are your first impressions of the CompLeap prototype? Some of you have already been playing around with it. If you haven't had time to do so, you can, of course, now, or then you can go directly to menti.com, so menti.com, and use the code 8811 and 00. And give us some feedback of your first impressions of the CompLeap prototype, whether you find it useful, whether you see it still needs improvement, and such. And it will come up on the screen as you send it in. Something that is good to note as well for all our international guests is that the data that is being used in the prototype is Finnish. So the language of origin is Finnish, so that's why it could be sort of difficult for you to follow what the results are, but that only relates to the fact that we don't have the same data in English yet. Useful is coming up very much. Limited, well, I can agree to that, because we only had 6 months to do so.
Yeah, we have only we have now only 2,000 study options that the recommendation algorithm is using. So there could be like even more, of course. Like for example, we are not having any like Finnish universities in there still. So it's only about approximately 2,000 options that you will have. But still, it's quite promising.
Yeah. And as some of you have already, you can use whichever language, Finnish or English, whichever is your choice, for providing this feedback. Thank you very much for this. It's actually very heartwarming to see words like useful, interesting, needed, easy to use, and has great potential. I would definitely agree, and I'm very proud of what we've been able to achieve in this limited amount of time and with this great team. As these still keep rolling in, and before I leave the floor to our piloters, I still have one more question that you can then type in your answers to while we continue with the program, just out of interest as well. And that will be, if you could add one feature or a feature to the CompLeap prototype, what would that be? And these will be these can go ahead and roll in the background, and we can come back to these at the end of the program. So if you have, you can both go and have a look at and play around with the prototype, and then if you have an idea of what you would like to add or what you see as the most vital part that is missing, please go ahead and add those. I see some people have already added job opportunities and working history. I would definitely agree, and these we tried to add at the very last moment, and we even asked for an extension from the Commission to be able to do this, but unfortunately we didn't get that extension, so we couldn't add those yet. But that would also be one of my first choices. These can roll here, and thank you from my part.
Thank you so much, Annika and Markus. I really agree that it's a really prominent tool. So super interesting. Hopefully this will continue and develop into something we could all use in our daily lives. But this prototype has also been piloted. So next we will hear some feedback from those pilots. So I would like to invite Topias Kähärä and Antti Kaasila from the National Agency of Education, and Topias is from the National Agency of Education, and then Antti Kaasila and Egle Germiene from the University of Oulu to tell about the results of the piloting. So please, the stage is yours.
Right. Hello, everyone, on our behalf as well. My name is Topias, and what we're going to do next, while these roll in the background, we're going to first show, we have one more video left for you guys. And we're going to first show that shows the basic idea behind what we have done during our piloting of this prototype. And after that, I'm going to go through basically the basic structure of our piloting, our user population, what kind of people we worked with, and after that, our brilliant analysts from the University of Oulu will go through the highlights of the data, basically what we found out, what the users thought about our service. So let's start with the video.
I really didn't know what to do next and how to find the best place for studies. I tested CompLeap with Jarno and got really good options. My previous studies were also there, so it's just very easy to fill it what I like in. It's just like a new way to find out what you want to become.
People often find out that what they are studying is completely wrong. I think CompLeap is a good way for encouraging the students to find out what they want to be and plan their options. I tested this out with my students, and we found out that it's great service and very easy to use, also trustworthy.
So that's it in a nutshell, and yeah, we're going to continue from. There we go. Continue from here. So basically, what we wanted to do with the piloting is we wanted to get real feedback from real target group users into our as an input for our prototype development. So it wouldn't have been any use for us at the National Agency for Education or as the Project CompLeap team ourselves think about what we actually need for the service and what we want the prototype to be. And that's why we decided to conduct the piloting via our great associate partners. And as Annika mentioned, they have been a great help, and both in the, benchmarking the requirements for such a service, and of course in the piloting of the prototype itself. So we had 3 different associate partner vocational educational institutions. They were Redu, Gradia, and OSA. And in there we have, of course, the staff has changed a bit, but approximately 15 guidance counselors and teachers who took part in the piloting themselves. So they were the ones who conducted the piloting interviews with our target users. And during this project, we had we're going to have, when the piloting ends in the end of this month, we're going to have around 10 piloting tests per guidance counselor or tester. So it's around 150 tests in total. And basically how we're going to do it is, or how we have done it, is basically we have a form for the counselor to fill out with the tester. So basically the counselor, or the counselor asks the user about their background. There's questions about how age and location and prior experiences with digital services and so forth. And after that, we're gonna, or we have conducted this user testing session. So the user themselves can individually test the prototype. See how we actually have tried to, do this with the least amount of help from the counselors as possible. So basically, we get as transparent and genuine feedback from the users as possible. And after that, after they have the users have tested out the service, the counselors ask them about basically questions about the service, if this is needed, what kind of uses would there be for such a service, and so forth. And after the tests, we get the feedback and we collect them with Egle and Antti here, and we analyze them, and of course they're going to be part of our reporting in the end of this month. And naturally, when the prototype was still being developed until the end of August, we used all of the data that we got from the users directly in the development of the prototype, of course in the scope of this project, but yes. So currently we have 87 individual piloting sessions done. This is basically some basic facts about the user population. So 87% of our users, one of our target groups for the service were people under 30. One of the specific target groups was people under the age of 30 who were not in employment, education, training, and we tried to contact them, for example, in OSA with the OVI service, so a walk-in guidance counseling service. And we have, of course, tried to receive input from, because we're only piloting in Finland, but we tried to receive input from another special target group, immigrants, and currently we have 9 different languages. Our testers' first languages are, there are 9 different first languages. And here you can see a map of the geographical variation where the people who have tested the service come from. And directly after the testing the prototype, the users filled out a Likert scale, so from 1 to 5, about different claims about the prototype. So was it easy to use, and so forth and so forth. And they said that it was easy to use, actually. And it was easy to use, and currently, due to the fact that we cannot have the users' own data in the prototype, they have to, as Markus selected the vocational education for natural protection, they had to put a certain hat on, and they had to act from that. So they couldn't get their own data input. So that naturally did not strengthen their confidence to apply for education but if they had their real data, they would say like, okay, this could be very useful for me. And the prototype itself, and as Markus selected some of the interests, these interests were they were diverse enough, there was a large amount of them, and they seemed suitable for this kind of a prototype. And as Markus lastly showed, the ESCO competences, so dividing your prior education into specific competences and selecting which ones are apt for you, that was deemed relatively useful. That seemed fine, and especially from the guidance counselor point of view, that has been seen as something that's very useful. And yeah, I think now Antti and Egli can continue with some more detailed highlights about our results.
Okay, thank you, Tobias. So as you understood, these were the results that Tobias presented from our Likert scale questions. And what we did else, we also asked a bunch of open-ended questions to our end users, so they could provide their free, unlimited, honest opinions. They did that actually, and that was very much interesting for us to read and analyze with Antti. Here are some highlights from the comments. So basically what we learned from analyzing these results was that most of the users, majority of the users were interested in the application and they saw some potential in it. They would like to use it when it's finished and running. Also what we learned that the quality of education recommendation that we provide is very important to our users, and they really expect this education recommendation to be very accurate and very trustworthy. So I think this is something that has to be very much prioritized in the future development still, to make these recommendations very personal and very accurate. Also, we saw that most of the users said that they would use this application for self-guidance, especially in the situations when it's not clear what to study, or when there is a need to limit or narrow down study options. Also, they would just basically use it for browsing and gathering information on studying, just general information on studying. And here in the end, we have this getting new ideas thing. So this is maybe one of our most important results, and maybe one of the most interesting for me personally, because we found users who said that using this prototype gave them new ideas and new insight of what they could study, ideas that they didn't really think about previously. And I think this is very important because it shows that CompLeap and also similar applications in the future, they could basically extend users' view of the possibilities for studying and also possibilities basically for life. And one more important thing here is that these recommendations were provided using already existing data sources. The information that we use is public and available, but the combination of this information still can make something new and something interesting and useful to our users. And one more important thing is that these recommendations are very much neutral and also unbiased, which I think is or could be very much important to some groups of our users. Okay, so these were the basically highlights of our user comments from open-ended questions, and we also asked opinions from our counselors and administration that run guiding services. We did some questionnaires and some interviews with them, and now Antti will present results from that side.
So, good afternoon on my behalf also. So, in addition, like Ekli told, in addition of getting information on feedback from the users, we also collect feedback from the counselors who took part in this piloting process, and also the administration side of the associate partners. We made a form where they could answer, and also have done a couple of interviews asking deeper insight on this piloting and CompLeap and digital education services in general. And the councillors' comments were, and these are the highlights from the comments, that there is a growing need for personal guidance. I think this is somehow connected to what Laura was saying, this millennial existential crisis, that they don't know what they want to study and they need guidance, and most of the councillors, maybe all of them, were saying that like the need for guidance is growing in the future. And also the digitalization will be a big part in this counseling in the future, as it is already now, but like it will be bigger. And about these services, the councillors said that these different kind of tools should be able to be customized in the need of the different user group, immigrants and maybe users with special needs, and so on. So that we don't just have this like bulk option, which would be like to everybody, but we need to have a feeling that the user should have a feeling that the tool is personalized for them. And most of the users were said that they would use CompLeap in their work as a counseling as a tool. But what they also highlighted is that we should take account the limitations, and what they meant by this is that we need to acknowledge that these are tools and you can use tools wrongly. So the hammer isn't useful if you are holding it wrong. So we need to know that what are the limitations in these systems. No matter how complex the algorithm behind the system is, it's still unlike an algorithm, and it might work wrongly. We don't know. But these were what the councillors were saying on the CompLeap and digital services. And do you want to? Yeah. Is there any questions?
Was there something that surprised you in the feedback? Something unexpected?
Well, I was personally surprised by that. Although this is only prototype, the proof of concept, right? It's not finished product, but there were still, like I said already in the slides, that there were users who got actually useful information and useful knowledge only from using this prototype. So it really gives hope, and like it is very promising that after it's finished and complete, then it's really useful for many users.
Although this has probably been information that has been around, but now they somehow got it nicely in a user-friendly way delivered to them. So
exactly.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
What is the role, or what should be the role of the counselors in this kind of a system and how it works? And was the testing you did in a context where there was people were using this service with the support of a counselor or without?
Well, basically, how the test scenario worked, where they were, well, our counselors, our partners, they gave basically asked a few questions about the background, then they gave them, for example, an iPad or some application to work, basically to test the product with. And in that situation where they tested the product, we asked the counselors to give the least feedback possible, basically the least guidelines how to use it as possible, so we could actually get real, as genuine and transparent results as possible. But basically, we have been thinking, as could be seen from here as well, CompLeap should be as a service. It should be something that can be used both individually and with a guidance counselor. So basically, as a supporting tool for the guidance counselors themselves. For example, the guidance counselors can lead the user to the service, so they can, if they don't want to test it right there, they can remember it later and test it individually.
Yes, and I could maybe add a little bit to this question, that after our interviews with the counselors, we really see that there are many different ways how CompLeap, such application, could be used in guidance counseling as a tool for counselors. So, for example, our counselors mentioned that it could be used just to start the conversation, for example, with the counselee, or also give ideas for the counselor, what could be recommended for the user. Also, I think there are, in guidance counseling, there are always so many situations where only application is not enough, this technology is not enough, because guidance usually involves, or at least sometimes involves, more emotional issues, different life problems and so on that, of course, this technology cannot address. Counselees, I think, need often some kind of emotional support that could be very much given by the guidance counselor, and then this CompLeap could be used as a combination, basically as a tool, as a support for the counselor as well. So of course it doesn't solve like all guidance problems, but could be used in some cases.
And we will hear more about the guidance after the break. If we don't have any more questions, I would like to thank Topias, Antti and Yle. And I would like to thank the audience for the first half of this show. Now we'll have a break. Please be back in 15 minutes, so at 3 in this room. And we will continue with, for instance, lifelong guidance, lifelong learning outside the borders of Finland, and then the impact evaluation of CompLeap. See you soon. Noin. No kunhan siihen jää yksi paikka, niin se on ihan fine. All right. Our 10-minute plus break has come to an end, and let's move on with the program. So like I said before the break, in this latter session, we will first hear about lifelong guidance, then get a glimpse on how does lifelong learning look in other European countries and what have been the lessons learned from this project in those countries. And then finally hear the key findings from the impact study done on CompLeap. And I would like to remind you, please join the discussion on Twitter using hashtag CompLeap and share your, what you actually learned today. Share it to the world outside so people can follow. But before we go to the panel discussion, I would like to invite our first speaker of the second session, Raimo Vuorinen, who is a project manager and a PhD from the Finnish Institute of Educational Research. And he will be giving a commenting speech from the perspective of lifelong guidance. So welcome, Raimo.
So good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation for this event. And the title for this presentation is Commenting Speech, but after listening to this first presentation, I almost planned to delete all the slides that I prepared for this session. So I try to comment some of the themes what emerged during the first session. And I come from the Finnish Institute for Educational Research, where we have a national task force to conduct and collect research that informs lifelong guidance policy making in the institutional level, national level, but also in the European Union level. And I've been working also with my colleague Jaana Kettunen, and some of the ideas what we are presented in the use of ICT in guidance are based on our joint research. But I would like to change the title of the presentation, which way to go, that perhaps rethinking and repositioning lifelong guidance. I would start on that. And we have heard Professor Järvilä, he was articulating quite clearly what is the new work and what implications it has for individuals. But also it has implications to some of the competencies and also the career guidance or lifelong guidance as we call it. And as careers are becoming increasingly multi-directional, so we need a new explicit competence. So this, my first comment, relates to the competence wheel that, and also the task of the guidance. Often when we have been talking about guidance, we have an image that we build first an educational system and then we invite students, and if something goes wrong, then we start the guidance. So it has already from the beginning a remedial approach, and we are looking for problems, and then we are looking for solutions to problems. So this has led to the image of guidance that we are looking for individual choices or individual decisions. And then we come to the practitioners and ask help. So my first comment was the question that the student was asking in the first video, if the counselor has any ideas. It gives the image that counselor makes the choice and gives the ideas based on one's selection, that I have some ideas and I have selected some of ideas what I introduced to a student. I'm a little bit exaggerating, I might be listening to her interest, but basically the implicitly gives the idea that I give something. It's a supplier language. And now when we are thinking about the situation that we are, instead of choosing one career or one choice or educational choice, we are changing jobs more than one time in our life. And if I go to that market over there, my language is not that, I wouldn't say that there are professions out there. I would say that there's a lot of work out there that needs to be done. And in order to do the work, you need competencies. And sometimes these competencies are clustered in such a way that we used to call professions. But now we've heard that they are hybrids, different, where I have to combine competencies or skills which come from more than one ESCO branch. And this means that it's a hybrid, and I have to be able to identify what are the competencies needed, whether I have them, and how I cluster them. And if I don't have them, I read the signals, what are the skills I need, and then I can identify a learning goal for myself. And then based on that, look for the learning opportunities, whether it's informal, formal, or validation, and different forms of learning to validate these competencies. And with these competencies, then I go to the market and try to sort of explore what are the opportunities to get security in the labor market, either employed, self-employed, or other types of contractual arrangement, gig work, and platform economy, and so on. So this is a new competence which we call career management skills. And the idea, a shift from the guidance perspective, is that not only to focus on individual choices, it's the emphasis on developing this skill to make well-informed and well-thought choices and decisions and plans to evaluate and implement them. So my question is that could these career management skills be added in the core wheel of competencies? Because there was this hard competencies and transversal competencies, lifelong learning and lifelong guidance. So in a way, this career management skills is an overarching competence that helps me to pull together all these competencies which I need. And the European Commission has included career management skills explicitly in the key competencies of lifelong learning last year. If you go to the competence number 5, personal learning and social competencies, career management skills is explicitly a competence which can be learned. And that's this new sort of definition of guidance, that we are depending on the level of these individual career management skills. Based on that, we choose different level of interventions. We provide either information, or then we explore whether there's more behind that, and we need more tools to work on this. So this is the paradigm shift that has taken place. We should be looking for the balance between the prevention mode and this learning mode, and then the part of the remedial approach as well. So I'm not excluding the remedial approach, but if we are only focusing on that, we are not promoting the individual agency of the individuals. So that's the shift has been moved from input-oriented perspective, provision of supporting services or teaching, to an outcome-oriented view to acquisition of these career management skills as a competencies. And this relates to another terminology. The system was providing recommendation. I'm now just exaggerating. If I make recommendation, is it user-centered and student-centered terminology? Yes and no, it comes from the technology, but then is it affordance or reflection, like we were discussing, that if we want to have the shift from the supplier-driven language, we have to use the terminology that explain the paradigm shift in guidance as well. And it comes also on the ethical issue, that what is the algorithm which is behind the tool which makes the recommendations? So then whether it's that user-centered or supplier-driven approach based on the information that comes from different sources, and if an individual is using the system, is there a consent of the individual? Where does this information come from, and what is the logic behind these algorithms which are used in the system? So these, I'm now quite critical, but if we want to look the modern and current paradigm of guidance, we have to use the terminology, and also they take into account the change that has taken place, whether we want it or not. And this implies to the use of technology and technology in guidance. During the 20 years, we have found out that one of the issues which has been preventing of the effective use of technology has been the resistance among the practitioners. To be honest, I'm a former practitioner myself, and the reason is that we have been used to this paradigm that this is the guidance. We talk in the room, we breathe in the same air, we are confidential, and this is guidance, and it's confidential. It's that. But it takes, now when the individuals have the access to same information that I have, I used to have books, and now I have the internet, but the individuals have the same access to same information as I have, so they use it with or without my help at the moment. So then instead of having this only as one way of guidance, we have to have this outcome-oriented view that what is your goal if you are looking for some future, you're thinking what I want to be, what I want to do tomorrow, it's my future. And we explore that with our peers, with or without the helper practitioner. And so the technology provides new forms of access to this information what we are utilizing in this process. I come to that in a minute. So the roles of ICT in guidance could be that it's a tool to assist further develop traditional approaches. It's an alternative to provision, but it's an agent of change. So we cannot just say that we have this guidance, what I used to do 30 years ago, and I'm putting that online without thinking of the implication of technology. So we have to be willing to reflect what type of implication technology has into my own profession. It's like a carpenter that I've been used to use the hammer and the nail, and this is what I've learned, and then I get the Hilti gun, I plucked it off and take the handle and start to hit the nails with the handle. So in a way, I don't get the full potential of the technology if I'm not willing to reflect what type of implication it might have to my profession. So in a way, ICT can be an administrative tool to support now we are coming to the architecture, so that was very good what I heard, that using the integrative role of ICT in bringing the actors and information together within the same process. And then it's an integrative agent, how we establish a common conceptual framework for the design of the modern guidance services. So now I come to the role. What are the implications based on our research? Guidance, we have a guidance function. We are delivering information. I'm in charge of that. It's a practitioner. Then I can deliver career services using telephone, radio, or these video chatting or video conferencing tool, but I'm in charge of the process. Then we can have a Moodle or platforms like that. We can have collaborative career exploration together with the students, but I'm still in charge of the process. But the new phenomenon comes to the co-careering terminology. So when individuals have access to same information as I have, but they can also generate information. We can have new presence in LinkedIn or new type of ideas. We can produce knowledge, and we can do that with or without the helper practitioner. So as a practitioner, I can't control that. But then the idea is this still guidance. If two of my students are discussing together in social media, is it guidance? So we have to be willing to sort of use new type of terminology to describe this outcome-oriented activities which take place. So the word co-careering, we started to use that to illustrate and highlight the role of individual in this mutual process. And it's an illustration of user-centered language. And I'm distinguishing supplier-driven language and user language. I use this education example that if I provide education and training, you are learning. So learning is the active verb that you are doing, the process you are doing. But if I provide guidance, what's the word that you are doing which describes your agency, as you are subject of the process? Could it be careering? And now when we are looking this co-constructing meaningful career-related knowledge with community members, we call it co-careering. And we make the technology to work on behalf of us, on behalf of the process. It doesn't exclude the previous role of the practitioner. You see that it's there delivering information, services, collaborative career exploration, though with those who have low readiness for the services. So my question to CompLeap, do you have tools to evaluate one's readiness to do this individual career process? So 2 components, CMS, and then the linking the readiness for this decision maker. Jukka Lerkkonen is here. He has done a lot of research on this topic as well. So this illustrates that technology brings new elements, and that's why we have to have new type of questions. Instead of asking that, is this real guidance, and then we have ICT guidance, it's not the same. That's not the question. We should think, what are the guidance functions we need to do? It's one-to-one communication, it's distance work, let's say group counseling, sorry. One-to-one group guidance, and then co-collaborative learning, and this co-careering. And it can take place in a room like this. We are breathing the same air, but you could be in Germany, I'm in Finland, we can have one-to-one and group work. So in a way, looking what are the guidance functions, and in order to take full advantage of the technology, we need to think what are the guidance functions we need to have. And that's why we have been looking how countries are, now I come to the policy perspective. When countries have been integrating ICT in guidance, they have taken first steps, creating fragmented tools and gadgets. The second one, they want to widen access to information. And third is the new ways of service delivery. But then a longer-term strategic perspective, like Denmark is doing at the moment, is sustaining new ways of service delivery. Now, the question in the project, CompLeap, you are looking for future step, how you can integrate CompLeap to existing e-governance systems. So guidance is not often, the tools are fragmented standalone services without links to personal register, without links to other national tools. And I think in Finland the challenge is, although the government program says that we want to build a new digital ecosystem, the challenge is how this can be linked with Työmarkkinatori and Opintopolku and so on, so whether we can have this open access data. Then some challenges what countries were facing. First one was the inadequate access to ICT. In some countries, the costs for the telephone connection was quite high, or the internet was not covering all the countries in remote areas. The second challenge has been inadequate access to information. So the labor market information might be collected in different logics, and it's not usable. And then we come to the inadequate skills and competencies of the individuals and the practitioners. So we have to pay emphasis on training the practitioners to use it, but also training the individuals to use it. And in the Finnish curriculum, we have this use of ICT as part of the career education classroom activities. But the most crucial is the inadequate integration to systems. So whether the government sectors have a common concept or understanding what is guidance, what should be the outcome of the guidance, not asking who is doing the right guidance, but looking what is our common objective and how different sectors can contribute to it. So my final comment is that this is the European Lifelong Guidance Policy Network. We were discussing how countries were using the ICT in guidance, and we made a definition that use of ICT in guidance refers to products, infrastructure, and the content that we are using in shaping policies and system development. And then it's also the services, resources, and tools, how citizens are using, and based on the monitoring, the use of it, we are using them to reshape and enhance the services. So using the technology, also documenting the process, not only utilizing it. And one example I take that this relates to the system architecture. This is from Sweden. They are planning to create, actually they have started to develop this platform as well, collecting data from different sources, actors who have information which is needed in the services, though open vacancies in the labor market, competence needs, and the competencies which are needed in the future, so anticipation skills and labor market forecasts. So then they link this to actors who provide the services and also take into account the who set expectations from the policy perspectives and create a common platform with open access to this same data. And this is available for system developers. And the latest innovation, what they are having, that instead of doing this competence mapping, what I have, this algorithm reads the competence demand, not using ESCO, but taking the different clusters. And then if I send a CV, they read also the CVs that are sent to the systems, and with the same algorithm, and do then the matching. And if my CV is not proper, then the actors who provide guidance services are using the same information. So the idea is that looking how the systems are also from the future perspective, and CompLeap it is now reaching some of these elements. So the question is that whether CMS can be included, whether instead of recommendation it could be some reflections or affordance or something like that, and then the development and the practitioner training is taking into account, and the links to the national systems. But it's well done, so I'm not criticizing. It's well done. Any questions?
Thank you, Raimo. You may think of the questions. Maybe I can start with a question, because you mentioned that this sort of this would require the shift of perspective from the input-oriented
to output.
Yeah, that exactly. I guide you with this information that I give to you to this output-oriented perspective. And then you mentioned that training the practitioners
is crucial.
Yes. So what do you think, like, how ready are the practitioners to this shift, or like how far are we from that reality?
I think one of the issues is the willingness to accept that there's still work for the practitioners. Practitioners are afraid that I lose my job. And that's why I want to keep my profession. That's human. It's my salary. But it's the willingness to take this step and think, what is the new additional element? I don't have to give away the previous one, but add this additional element to accept that it's not, I can't control anything anymore, the process. For some people, it's a helping profession, it's still there. I'm not excluding that, but willingness is the first one. So I think it's not an age issue, it's just also it's expectations from the others as well. So often if many people are expecting that go to a counselor, then counselor will help you. So then it's how we see the profession as well, or the helping professions, or group of those different actors. So
yeah, so there will obviously be work for counselors, but the content of the job may change a bit.
Exactly, yeah.
So lifelong learning is needed for them as well.
And more demand guidance. So we have evidence that the demand, I don't say only need, but I say demand for guidance is increasing as well. Need is something, you miss something, but demand is that I want something. So it's through language and terminology we create the future, or let's say, illustrate the reality.
Thank you. Any other questions to Raimo on guidance? Yes, please.
The other way around, I mean, then the individual users, what is their understanding of guidance?
Exactly.
How they relate to these modern digital tools and services. So, I mean, also they need to establish an understanding of what they can expect, how things work and function, don't you think?
Exactly. It's here. It's inadequate skills and competencies of the users and the practitioners.
Yeah. What can be done?
In Finland.
So that people online also will hear this question. So the question was that how can the individuals who are guided, what kind of change is needed from their side?
The change is needed, that also identifying this as a competence which can be learned. So it's a competence, new competence that helps me to get best use of the existing opportunities. It's a learning task. And we have that in the Finnish curriculum.
It's for both sides.
Yeah.
Good. Yes.
I have a more like comment, but you mentioned that. Okay, this is not a question.
Yes, it is. Okay, this is not a question, but this is a comment. You mentioned that digital transformation of guidance, or something like that. Yeah. I really see that this is one key issue. When we are planning our new services, we have to think about it that way. That is it the optimization of a current service, or is it a new digital transformation, new digital services? In this way, we may have a more analytic way to understand what we are going to do.
I think you have the toolbox. You have many tools for this, so you don't have to delete anything. So it's adding an additional layer on this top. So then we were talking about in guidance there are two components, content and the process. So you have the content at the moment. What do I have to know about myself and then the future in order to make well-informed and well-thought-through decisions? So now it's this process component that has to be integrated in the system. So then it's very good information system at the moment. It's far beyond. I've seen it's an innovation. So it's don't sort of take this only critics. So it's a good tool. but this process component could be strengthened.
Good. Thank you, Raimo.
Thanks.
Let's give a warm applause to Raimo. It's super interesting. All right, now we're moving to the panel discussion of today. And during the next 45 minutes, we are aiming to hear more about how lifelong learning and its support structures, such as different digital services or lifelong guidance or competence profiling, look elsewhere in Europe, what are the challenges in Europe, and then of course share about sort of the experiences in this project from abroad. So can I first welcome our 4 panelists on stage, then we'll present you when you are here. Let's give them also a warm applause. Just whichever seat. All right, warm welcome to all of you. Just to present you briefly, so our panelists today are Rakel Tiehonen, a director for the National Agency of Education and a member of the CompLeap steering board. Then we have Mr. Hans-Peter Benz from Regional State Administrative Agency Bezirksregierung Köln, who has been an associate partner in CompLeap in supporting the international piloting, more or less so, yeah. Then we have Veera Veemaa, project leader from DUO, the Education Implementation Service for the Minister of Education, Culture and Science. And DUO has worked on communications and international piloting here in CompLeap as well. And then we have Salome Virkus, coordinator from Estonian Qualifications Authority, also been supporting the international piloting or the piloting in Estonia. Great, wonderful to have you here. Make sure you have microphones and that they are on. That will help us. You may have to, is it on the on? Okay, great. So now that you have been following our discussions today, I would like just maybe briefly to have the first thing you have on the top of your mind at the moment. What has inspired you, and then what challenges remain to be solved? Anyone can start.
Yes. I think what CompLeap has delivered, of course, I'm a member of the project, so I'm very positive. It has a lot of opportunities, mainly that was the review comments from the audience also. But I would like to have more involvement from the labor market in it. So it's good to, from the point of view from a learner, to have all the information combined in one overview. So that's great. But I think not only in Finland, but all over Europe, we're not there yet. Shared information, shared databases, how you combine databases to support the full potential of a solution as CompLeap. So there has to be a lot of work done, and I think that's a big change in, for example, the Netherlands to reach that.
Great. Then other first feelings.
I try to talk without the mic, so.
For the online audience,
okay.
So you can pass the mic.
Yeah, okay. So I'm not a member of the project, and but from a counselor or advisor's point of view, I like it very much because it's a path to a non-prescription like advising of my students and people. I'm working as a teacher, so I'm personally involved in how students find their way. And from a computer expert's point of view, I like it because it's a very interesting framework and it's highly adaptable, very good scalable, and as I guess it's XML based, so, and I could find interfaces to fit in all the complex German databases and funny different calculations and advising and system we have. As you know, we have a federal educational system, so I'm working in North Rhine-Westphalia, and North Rhine-Westphalia is quite different to Bavaria or to Baden-Württemberg, and we have own curricula and we have own systems, and also we have own funny special seminars and lessons and stuff. And so the area where we both are working in is 4.6 million inhabitants, and it's quite 80% of Finland, and with a very complex educational system. And so I would like to have such a tool to work with that. So. Because for the instant, for the time being, Cologne is working on a counseling and advising system to digitalize this. The nearby town is working on such a system. Some communities are working on a catalog of students to show off their skills and competences to companies aimed to move those companies to hire them. As you know, maybe we have the dual system, which is our professional or for professional people for labor work educational system, which is different to the academic system, which is different to the in-between system. And it would be cool stuff. And I could follow those three young people showing the panel outcome, and maybe my students could use their smartphones for self-learning and self-diagnostic, which is...
Yeah. How about Salome? Your first feelings?
My first feelings is that it's really interesting. There are a lot of features that we have also thought about in Estonia. I also agree that it should be maybe a bit more related to labor market needs. Because one thing that we do in our office is anticipate future labor market needs. So to say what skills and competences will be needed, and I see how hard it is to give that information to people or make a change through that. So I think this part could maybe be added in the future. Also, I think that this kind of system in Estonia, I think would be probably easier to implement than in some other countries. Because first of all, we are a really small country. And secondly, we already have a thing called X-Road, which is a structure that connects public databases. So probably the implementation part for us would be somewhat easier than to some other countries. So it's something that we should look into.
Yeah. How about Rakel?
Okay, so much has said already, but I can agree with this labor market thing that, of course, when we are, or the young people are looking for education, there's always this idea of what I will be working with later on. But then during this afternoon, it was nice to hear about Lauri Järvilehto told about this motivation and what is interesting a person, and through that the motivation comes. And in our project, of course, I'm part of the project, so I may give you a positive evaluation, but we have this interest in this prototype, so it is an important part on the path when choosing education and career.
Yeah. Soon we will hear more about what are the hot potatoes regarding lifelong learning in these countries. But first, I would like to invite Tomi Kytölä, who works as a senior officer in the Ministry of Culture and Education, to give his sort of brief insight to what is actually now happening with continuous learning in Finland, so that we get on the same page with that. So now I'm here. Great. So just and I will give you a mic to do that. So first, what's going on in Finland, and then panelists reflect their own countries.
Yeah, I think I will be quite brief on what's going on. I think there's multiple different things on the government program that's kind of interlinked to the things that has been done in the CompLeap project and the results therewith. And I think in general, for example, I would like to already thank the people who has kind of presented, has been speakers already, because they have given me new ideas, and I think also some of the questions, I think there's already some kind of solutions, and I think we can kind of push forward with those. But in general, the government program, I think there's two kind of bigger topics that really kind of are obvious for this: the parliamentary reform of the continuous learning and responding to the people's lifelong need to upskilling, reskilling. And I think the guidelines for that are coming in the end of 2020. And also, actually, one thing I'm not sure whether it's so obvious to many people is also the extending the compulsory education to the upper secondary, which I think will also somewhat change the break in when you go from primary education to the upper secondary education and the guidance there. So I think those are the most obvious ones. And I think in the work done here, the architecture and so on, I think there's many bits and pieces that are kind of reusable and usable as whole in the coming maybe even months, but also in years. So I thank you already by now. Yeah.
Thank you. And now I'd like to give the comment to the panelists. So you've heard, you've probably received an overview of the situation in Finland at the moment, but I would be really interested in hearing how about your respective countries? What is sort of the situation with lifelong learning and its support systems? So at least on top of the things we have discussed today, things that, for instance, how to integrate different services, like Lauri Järvilehto mentioned, that we have all these great services, but they don't talk to each other. So that's one challenge. Or in general, lifelong learning is not exactly equal in Finland. So it's usually the most who are already most educated who receive most of the learning, and so on. Or Raimo was talking about the guidance. So all these themes that have been discussed today, what is the situation in your countries? Please.
I think in Estonia also the problem of inequality is quite a topic. Not only these white collar, blue collar groups, but also different age groups, also in different regions. Estonian speaking, Russian speaking groups are really different, even men, women, because there are so many different groups, and I think they all need to, not all, but they need different kind of motivators and different kind of measures, because maybe for this older generation, people who are, I don't know, living in the countryside, I cannot go to them with this amazing system. You have to, where they can map their own competencies, etc., or even tell them that think about what you want to do with your life, what is your aspirations. It's not really working because there are still groups of people who think that following their dreams is just something foolish and childish. So we need other measurements to deal with those people too right now. Yeah. So yeah, this is a difficult challenge.
Before this session, I would have guessed that Estonia must have very, very developed digital learning ecosystems, because you are usually always ahead in all everything that has the E something. And you have the X-Road, but how about these learner-centered?
Yeah, we have X-Road.
The mic a bit closer to your mouth.
Yeah, we have X-Road, but I think that until now, at least, we haven't really taken advantage in field of education because, yeah, I have to disappoint you that we really don't have that good supporting systems for education.
Okay.
We are getting there and doing different initiatives, but yeah, it's still work in progress, unfortunately.
So maybe we can win you here for once.
We'll see.
How about Vera?
In the Netherlands, we have a change. Lifelong learning was a big topic, but now we have new term, lifelong development. And we have several websites that support lifelong learning for vocational education and higher education. And when you go to that website, you can fill in some filters. What was your pre-education? What profile did you have? What is your interest? And then you find several educational institution where you can do a study. And when you go to that study, you see what the opportunities are in the labor market, how many students started this year, how the students graded the education, if there are possibilities in other sectors to do this with this education. So that is more for the learner. For development, there is also a lot of initiative together with the labor markets and educational institutions to reskill and upskill employees. So that's also financed by the government, but educational institutions don't want to have too much involvement by the government in the Netherlands. So we always have to be a little bit distanced.
That sounded, can you tell a bit more about this? You mentioned the collaboration between the government and the labor unions to reskill people, because I think the funding question has been a big thing in Finland. Like if we need to reskill or upskill a huge masses of people, we need to rethink the financing as well.
Yeah.
So have you thought of that? Do employers have some sort of role?
Yeah, employers have a big problem. They have a lot of work, but not the employees. So they want to be involved. What type of education we give to their future employees, and are they good skilled, and they also want to be involved with getting new students to make this job popular, so more people come. So there are a lot of initiatives when people go to secondary education, all kind of sort of markets where students go to get enthusiastic. There are also employers who give people, if you want to come work with us, we guarantee you a job. So come with us, we educate you with a formal diploma, and you have a job guarantee. So a lot of that initiatives we have.
How about Germany?
I try to short this also. What we have two main branches. One is what I would call the labor side of the dual system, and the academic branch. And we have that in part-time and in full-time. So, for example, this vocational school where I'm working, you can get a K9 grade, a K10 grade, a middle school grade, what in German it's called Abitur, which is called, I don't know, Baccalaureate. And you get what we call a branch-specific Abitur, for example, for metal branches or electronics, or you could get a school degree in computer science, and you could get a Techniken, which is more or less a sort of a small bachelor engineering.
Okay.
And this all in one vocational school, and that mirrors a bit what type of chances you have. Also, you could go to any university and ask if, say, take you. And if they want, and they find you have high knowledge in medicine, they could give you a place as a student in medicine. So it's very complex, very open, and therefore very difficult to find your own path. Because once you see your path, maybe you see a better one. Or maybe you see another one. Or maybe somebody shows up and tells you, why not working in that branch because you earn better money. So it makes it very difficult. And we have it also from the company sides, companies looking for people. They are also involved in educational business. So because in Cologne, Ford is offering his people own ways to become an engineer or to become a technician or to repeat an assessment center because they want the people, but they are not fit enough, or they were not fit enough with the first assessment center. So, and that's the way we are living at the moment, and it's very difficult to tell students, because we have a lot of students with migrational backgrounds, and they don't quite understand the system. This is very difficult to tell parents and people how the system works. Because in some cultures, so it is used, so they say you become an engineer if you want or not, like my granddad did. So I got the receipt for I need to be an engineer, I must become an engineer, so I got one. And so that's, that adds which I did not see, and the CompLeap leaks a bit of also migrational backgrounds, and this is, for us, we struggle a lot with migrational backgrounds.
And as was mentioned earlier, these systems and support structures should be sort of modifiable for different groups, so maybe not one size does not
But
fit
I'm
all.
sure from the programming side, it's very easy to adapt systems to help. Yeah.
Thank you. I think today we have been discussing mostly formal learning, but I think Sitra, the Finnish Innovation Fund, and Think and Do Tank, and Finland's Fund for the Future, that is steered by the Parliament. There's a person from Sitra who would like to present the panelists a question that I think relates to informal learning. So please, Pinja Ryky from Sitra, what would you like to ask from the panelists? And give you a mic. Yes.
Thank you. As we all know, people learn everywhere and at all times. We simply cannot turn off the process of learning, even if we wanted to. But however, learning that happens outside the formal learning system is not always made visible or recognized. So here are my questions to panelists. How do you see the recognition of informal and non-formal learning in the future? And the second question is, how should new digital solutions in EU or in your own member country take non-formal learning into account?
This is a difficult question.
I can't speak for my country because it's too complex to answer for a country, and I'm not an official, so I'm no political, so thanks God not. But what I would say is the informal learning will have a huge future due to the systems we have, which we did not have 10 years ago.
Yeah, so how can you identify non-formal learning?
We have an initiative in the Netherlands that is flexible learning, and it's flexible building a diploma, if you want to. Not many people want to, when they are workers, want to go to education for 4 years or 2 years. So we have informal, we have an initiative that is with badges. informal batches and formal batches, and that batches you can build up a diploma. So you can show your batches at your CompLeap profile, for example, and share it with new employees or with your grandmother or you want to share with. So in the Netherlands we have recognition for informal learning. It's getting more and more important, and we are going to do that throughout batches.
Batches, yeah.
We also have a tool for that, not in all fields, but it's working in some fields. It's awarding of it's awarding of occupational qualifications. We have things called qualification standards, occupational qualification standards, and when the competencies are assessed against the standard, people can have an occupational qualification certificate. So, for example, I have worked as a hairdresser all my life, or maybe 5 years. I have learned at workplace in experience, so I don't need to have an actual formal education diploma. I can just have my competencies assessed and get an occupational qualification certificate, and information about that is put into the registry of qualifications. So this is one way, for example. But yeah, it's not working in all areas. It's just for some occupations.
Yes, as most of the audience knows, in vocational education and training in Finland, we have this kind of system as you described in Holland and Estonia. And I think that it is the future that we are recognizing the competence more and more, despite where it's achieved. But this is, I think that there are two sides. I think most of Finnish people are very school orientated. So although we are learning, most of the time also during our work life, we think that learning is happening in a formal place. So it's not just these schools and universities that should offer new types of learning or recognition. It's also our customers that should be used to see learning in outside school.
I would like to add something, because what I don't like it to put it in files like informal, non-informal learning. So our experiences since 2002 or 2003 something is that a competence-guided learning and teaching is the key to efforts. So, and so maybe competence-guided, self-guided, and self-diagnostic in learning will be the future. Because we have also small little helpers with us. So maybe this.
Then one question I had was that because CompLeap's aim was to create these learner-centered digital ecosystems, so that I would have, like in one place, compiled all the diplomas I have, everything I have learned, and then I would have like the offering of education and training easily available. I guess we all know that that's not, unfortunately, yet the reality. So I would like to ask the panelists that what challenges can be solved with technology, and then what are the challenges where we need sort of cultural or political change to make this vision of CompLeap reality? Because I don't think technology solves part of the problems, but then we need to change, I guess, something in the behavior or ways of working. So could you point maybe to some, which challenges are technological and which ones are political or like related to human behavior or cultural change?
As I said, a few minutes ago, I see that it's also in our culture how we see learning. So that's one mental issue that we have to overcome. I don't know. I think this digital part is easier.
Yeah.
But this is we have to change the culture also in our educational organizations, but also in work life. We have some branches like computing, so there the certificates are not so important. But in overall, we like to have certificates.
We like diplomas.
Yes.
From the Netherlands point of view, we are organized differently than Finland. We don't have one or two central databases, so we had a lot of databases. So to put the user in the central, there has to be a lot of cooperation with each other, and they are competitors in real life. So how do you overcome that? Not on short term in the Netherlands, but there are other ways providing the learner information. But from the learner's point of view, when there is something developed, the user is always involved. What do you want? What do you need? So what is going to be developed also is going to be used. So that's an important thing.
How about Estonia?
Yeah, I have to agree with the first comment that it would probably, the technical implication would be probably easier than to actually make it, to make these cultural political changes. Because also Estonians love certificates, love to have something to hang on the wall. It's quite hard to overcome that. And also to kind of enhance the trust of employers, that not everything has to be proved, not all competencies have to be proved in advance, but just to trust the self-assessment of employees and so on. So just to change this mindset is probably the most challenging.
Yeah. And then a question to Rakel, since you have been following CompLeap, you've been in the project, but kind of maybe not in the very core of everyday work. So it would be interesting to know that what have been your top 3 learnings from the project now looking back these 2 years?
Well, I could tell you about this project management and about this bureaucracy, but I won't go there.
Thank you.
But this substance in this project has been very interesting and exciting. I think this work with this architecture, that we really look at things from the customer's point of view. In CompLeap it has been a learner. Maybe next step with the labor market it's a citizen. But anyway, a citizen is a learner in our point of view. The prototypes has given something concrete to show, and it has been much easier to get feedback. Of course, these pictures of architecture, as Ari showed, they are very clear to someone. But for our users and workers, these prototypes has been very important. So we have received very much input in our everyday service development in Edufy from this project. This learner-centered work and this architecture are at least 2 the most important things.
And if you try to foresee, where will CompLeap be in 5 years from now?
I don't know where CompLeap is, maybe the project.
Or the solutions created there.
Yes, but I'm sure that these ideas that have developed in this project are living inside our services in some form or another. And we have also the work we have done with other organizations and with other branches. It's very important. So that our development is not just inside our own sector. So we see it broader.
Great. Do we have Hanni Muukkonen here? There you are. Great. Because in the beginning, if you remember the slide from the very beginning where there were the 3 key sort of outcomes of the project, and one was related to analytics and how can analytics better support learners. And Hanni Muukkonen, professor from the University of Oulu, has worked with this analytics side in the project. So can you share something about the importance of analytics in this work, as it was one of the key results? Or you can use this mic, yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. Yes, I've had the pleasure to work in the project, and my background is in educational psychology, but this question of how to use technology in education and learning analytics now especially is one that is very exciting, and we had a great opportunity here to work on that topic as well. And I think you all could agree with that. Learning analytics kind of is thought to hold a lot of potential, but we still need to see what are the real cases, how to use it, where to use it, and what are the actual benefits from it. But there's a lot of development work in high speed going on right now, and I think we have in CompLeap a nice example of that as well, that where we could head towards too. So there you could, in the CompLeap that we saw the demonstration, we could see how the existing registers provide learners data about their educational background, and then also about how the existing databases you can use to view potential study options. Also about how to personalize these study options through rating based on own interest. And I think this is a very important addition to what is usually provided, like that you can really use the information that what is of value for me, from all these options, what would be important for me, and use that information to gain recommendations or further guidance about potential study places. And I think it was very nice how you raised this question of not really recommending but enabling, that this is really that we need to think of it from those terms, that how do we support students and potential learners to kind of find their own key interests. From background in research on this topic, it's really that the main benefits of learning analytics have been defined as enabling students to reflect on their learning and their possibilities based on different types of feedback. So it's not just providing some visualizations, but it's these opportunities that they get for reflection through these different ways of using this material. And I think, like we saw in the demo here, there's a lot of things coming up when you start using this system and you get all these keywords, and then you think, like, what am I supposed to do with this? And the kind of these keywords can kind of point to very different types of activities, and how does then that person kind of start planning about their own future and possibly get new ideas about which directions to look for my future career. I think what is a better use of learning analytics, and I would then like to hear what you think about it, is that in place of getting somehow automated or very impersonal recommendations, we really need to make this personalization and this way of integrating own interests and own views of the future into this information that can be gained through the digital environments, plus then the kind of guidance through reflection together with a counselor or somebody else, perhaps a parent or a sibling or a friend about the potentials that you can find in the digital information. But so how to support this decision making, the reflection upon possibilities and realistic feedback, and also alternative learning paths. Because we have, at least in Finland, we have been studying this issue, and we see that there's great gender-based bias in what kind of jobs people look for, what kind of educational paths they go for. There's great segregation between educational fields. So what would be analytics guidance in this sense, that they would kind of open more of the options available for the learners and make more different alternative pathways for studying open. I think one issue still to point out is about the ethics, because whenever we go into learning analytics, we really need to keep good eyesight on ethics, how to make sure that the systems that we use and the ways we use the information gathered and the situations also where we give, for instance, counseling, and what is documented from those. How are they used for the benefit of the future learner or the lifelong learner, and how all the different data possibilities are used in a way that keeps the ethical use in mind. So there are potential always for, on one hand, misunderstandings, but also on the other hand, of misuse of data. So how do we ensure that these aspects are considered when the analytics parts are developed? So my question that I was actually pondering myself very much on was, what is a better use of learning analytics? So did you think of things that you have also come across about the use of analytics?
Maybe I'll start, so the wiser members of the panel have more time to think what to ask. But it came to my mind that there has been this kind of job recruiting, that people are not telling their gender or name or age. So maybe in this also this kind of service, although it would use your information about your interests and your competencies, but you wouldn't tell whether you are a woman or a man or at what age. So we could conquer one bias, maybe, because usually if we use the data that we have about learners' paths, what they have studied and where they are working, so it will just get stronger bias as a result.
Then I think one or two very short comments from the panelists, and then we move to questions from the audience. So please.
The problem with the personal data, it exists. So, we see what I talked about, the KAOA program we're running in North Rhine-Westphalia now. So with K8, they start with what we call a Berufswahlpass, which is a sort of a personal passport describing all professional things they did, practica and school and special examinations, and then we have they have a student's portfolio they have to bring, and also we have a sort of learning potential analysis, which is done by any of the teachers, K8 or before. And with this parcel of data, they ought to show up at, for example, a vocational school. And so the vocational school teachers are obliged to check and do some analytics and advise students and guides them. So the problem is, say, if somebody does not want to show this, he doesn't show this. In the companies, it's different. They get all the data, like sex, like age, everything. But also, it's not, you can't approve it always. So. That's the situation we run.
Yeah. If nothing super, yeah. Okay, they're happy to pass. Yes. Thank you, Hanni. Then we have a couple of minutes for questions from the audience. Yes.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, dear panelists, for your insightful sharing. Very interesting to hear what's happening across Europe. And then secondly, I wish to thank the CompLeap team on this wonderful prototype. Well done. My question to the panelists is, I'm involved myself as a career guidance expert in developing the European Commission's new Eurooppasali portal on lifelong learning and career development. And we have had some exchanges with the CompLeap team, as there are several commonalities between these two products being developed for citizens. From the Eurooppasali perspective, I'm interested in this portfolio thinking, meaning that citizens, learners are encouraged to create their own portfolios where they can record their past and present achievements and accomplishments and then plan for their future. But how to sell this idea of a portfolio to individual users, no matter what age they are? What are the benefits from your perspective? Because it takes quite some hard work when you start working on your portfolio. And then also, such a portfolio is helpful when you start looking for jobs, for learning opportunities, and so forth. So the benefits for the individual user to really work hard on his or her portfolio.
Yes, thank you for your question. I think the benefits for the user is that all the information is available, accessible in one platform. So that is very helpful when you're looking for an educational or a job, or that you can go to one platform or share your information with employers. So I think the use of it sells itself. But the question is how people know that it's there. So that's marketing. Yeah.
Or Salome, do you want? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree that it can be challenging, but yeah, the personal benefits have to be kind of stressed out. So through that, so it's easier to keep an eye on your track as well. So.
The first, for me, the prime benefit is the self-reflecting for both sides, the counselor side or the employer side and the student side. And it's closing sort of a circle and going on and on. And so if you do this, if you run this circle all your life, so you're getting better and better and better, and your learning curve will be a more stable and more consistent one. And it's a helping tool. Maybe in 10 years we use other helping tools, but the below working system, the model is the approach. So.
Thank you. Any pressing questions from the audience? I think the panelists will stay at least for a minute after the official session has closed, so you can talk to them still in the lobby. Hey, warm thanks to Rakel, Hans-Peter, Veera and Salome. Let's give a warm applause to you. And now the final short presentation before we head to the mingling and drinks and snacks part of the day. So I guess when we were commenting on the pilots or the prototype, we all agree that there's great potential in what has been done in CompLeap, but there's actually some like some real evidence now on the impact and on the potential of CompLeap. So I'm here presenting Kati Isoho and Heli Koskenniemi from the Finnish Education Evaluation Center, who have done, or who present their first results of the impact evaluation or study done on CompLeap. So I leave the floor to you.
Okay. So dear audience and friends of CompLeap, it's our pleasure to be the final part of this final seminar. So as told, I'm Kati Isoho from FINEG, and this is my colleague Heli Koskenniemi, and we both work with this external evaluation. And we shall focus today on two issues, because as at least part of you know, our evaluation task is actually a bit wider than we discussed today, but due to the schedule as well as the audience composition, we will focus on the future potential of the CompLeap work, as well as so-called policy aspect of both continuous learning in a CompLeap context. So it has to be noted at this point of the evaluation process that the findings and conclusions presented today are the initial ones. So we are in the middle of the evaluation now. So we will submit the external evaluation report in the very end of November. So this is what we have now. So we have still some steps to do in gathering the evaluation material, as well as analyzing the collected material deeply enough. But what we will tell you today is something we both see that we are, let's say, how would I say, confident enough to present it today. So I think that it won't change too much in a final report. So we have 7 notions, initial findings and conclusions we will present you today. And the first one is, that is actually discussed already today and is to some extent validating our findings as well, that the key outcome recognized by the various actors as well as stakeholders we have met during the evaluation process so far is that one of the key outcomes is the software architecture developed and based to the Finnish system and centralized data resources. And as usual, we will background and handle more in detail all the findings and notions we present you today, but because the report is still to come, we do not do it today. So there will be relevant facts, backgrounding all the findings, as well as more description from every finding.
Okay, this is our government language statement in these findings, very long sentence. Our finding is that CompLeap development work, it makes visible that joint and advanced competence-based and learner-centered digital services are possible in countries that have centralized data resources. They work for the individual citizens as well as counseling staff. And next finding is our interviews show that the stakeholders have been widely included in this design and implementation of this CompLeap project, which is nice to have noticed. And our fourth finding, conclusion is, managing the expectations regarding the project outcomes and impact is seen as a challenge. The expectations set in the beginning of the project are high. A competence-based and learner-centered digital service that advances the content learning in the area of EU. So we ask, what is the realistic to achieve this in 2 years of project work?
Okay, so as this is European Union finance project, there is naturally an international dimension in the whole project integrated to all activities. And our notion so far is that the concrete completion of the international dimension is still relatively low. That is in a concrete way seen that developed architecture is not accessible as such to the all European Union countries. So as far as we know, there seems to be several reasons for that. For example, starting from that 1 out of 5 consortium partners implementing a project is outside of Finland. But we will handle this more in detail in the external evaluation report later on. So, there is one notion that became clear, especially when we made interviews among the stakeholders and actors of the project regarding the CompLeap prototype. And that notion is that the tool that is developed requires individual users to have both advanced language skills as well as advanced IT skills. And naturally, this creates a challenge as some of the key target groups defined in the very beginning of the project have limitations in these.
We have one finding about the future. We asked who's got the ownership of the project key outcomes, the software architecture, the algorithm, the stakeholder network of the project. The project is still ongoing, but we are hoping to find an answer to this question as well. And the future is something we like to hear your opinions as well, and so Kati will explain our questions to you.
Yes, so this seminar is not the only thing we would like to have from you, because one step agreed with the project actors to gather material for the evaluation is that once you left the room, you will receive email from the CompLeap project team, and there is a link to the electronic questionnaire where we ask you to elaborate our findings, all those 7. There are 2 questions, so it should not take too much time to answer. And we ask you to submit your electronic answers by Friday, because we have to have something on the paper in the end of October already, so we can't use too much time for that. But I think there are just 2 questions. So we wait for your answers, because this is an important part of the process, and actually it's very typical for the FINEC evaluations, as once we have some initial findings and conclusions, we ask the stakeholders and actors involved in the object of the evaluation to reflect them before we write the final report. So you will receive the email from the CompLeap actors, so please submit your answers for our use. So, thank you.
Voitte mennä. Thank you so much, Kati and Heli. So please help CompLeap and answer the email. Hey, before closing this session, still final words from Antti Laitinen to sum up the day. There, great, you're still here.
Okay, it's been a long day. I'm sure that all of you are waiting already. The drinks are served and coffee as well. So in a minute we can go and have some drinks and discuss. And after that, hopefully we can leave this building. If the demonstration is over, we'll see. But before that, just one more Mentimeter. We really need your feedback. So I really would hope that it doesn't take too much. So about the seminar.
And there are 2 more Mentimeters actually. Sorry. That's still okay. So, first of all, how have you liked this seminar? This is easy to answer. You just go to the same page, use the same code, and then give us some instant feedback. And after that, if you want to elaborate, there's the second question, which we'll keep again rolling in the background when we go and have our drinks. Oh, sorry. 881100. Sorry, it's supposed to be showing there, but of course it isn't. So, thank you, Topias.
No worries. There we go. Yes.
Thank you. There you go.
Okay, it seems to be quite positive one. At least the project team has been very inspiring day to be here with you. And like I said when we started, stakeholders' role has been very important, and we really hope that also after this project we can continue the collaboration with you. Many of you are already having other interesting projects going on, so don't hesitate to contact either of our consortium organizations after this project as well, so the development goes on. I'm sure that the development around these issues will continue, both in member states and then also in the EU level. Please also follow what is happening around the Eurooppasali. It's an interesting EU level project. And most of the audience here are the Finns, so probably like it was already heard in Finland, these issues will be in the agenda also in the future. So from the project team side, thank you very much for being here. And before you leave, I would ask the project team and then the associated partners, let's take a couple of group photos before the mingling and drinks, but the others, you can already leave this space and drinks are served, and let's continue the discussions in the other rooms. So have a good day.
Thank you all.